Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we have, for me, kind of an exciting episode. We have the creators of the TrueRep app, which I've just recently started working with some of my clients, and I think it has just tremendous potential. So I was happy that these guys were willing to come on and kind of talk about it. And so we have Colby and Brody, and Let's start with where you guys decided, like, how did this whole process start, basically?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks, Chad, for having us on.
Thanks for having us.
So it kind of goes back to 2018, 2019. I was at a powerlifting meet for my brother in Mississippi. And, I noticed all these people getting red lighted for depth, right? And I was looking at these lifters and I thought, they were going deep enough. And this was on squat. But it's all subjective. And at the time, I had the idea for some kind of app that could watch you while you squat and tell you objectively if the hip went below the knee. And it would be, right every time, no matter who the judge was, because the judge was always just the software. But the tech wasn't really there at the time. So kind of shelved that. And then Brody and I started working together. A couple years later, we started with an app, and it was just kind of like a general deals app, finding deals around town. And we started with that. But we wanted to pivot into something fitness related. I'm pretty passionate about it, and so is he. Yeah. So, that's what we wanted to do. And we wanted to build something that was, actually usable. There's a lot of fitness apps and there's a lot of stuff on the market, and there's some good apps, but a lot of the times it's kind of regurgitating the same thing over and over again, just like a generic programming app, generic, tracking app, macros tracking. So we wanted to make something different. And at the time, the tech was actually a lot better. 3-4 years changes things by a lot. So Apple had released this new pose estimation library that was completely free and it could run on any iOS device. So we decided to pull that idea that I had, a few years ago back out and got to work on it. And that's where TrueRep Squat came from. Yep. That's our first one. And it's basically just like a biomechanical analysis app for the squat. Main things are, it tells you when you hit depth, and, it checks for knee cave, and it also just overlays all the joint positions on the body in the video. So you can get an idea of, imbalances. And I think you were mentioning that, Chad, you can see hip shifts and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how we started.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that was the first one. I thought that was like a new feature for the one here. And I'm like, holy shit, that's cool. Because, I mean, even like, and that's going back to the judging thing. The judging thing's, it's always been somewhat subjective, because if you have a little skinny person with really small thighs, it looks totally different than like a big guy who has a huge thigh. And I have a background in physical therapy, so like I had to measure with a goniometer, like, angles and stuff, and I know that, like, no, you're going from the greater trochanter to the middle of the knee, and that's where I'm getting this angle. So like the judging thing has always been, I keep going, why? Like, you got to understand that. And when I do judge, it's like when somebody walks up, I kind of look at their frame and how they're built.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it seems like when I saw that the squat app, I'm like, holy shit, like this, it actually draws, like, it's hard to look at somebody's body and see a little bit of shift, but when there's a line across it, you're like, holy shit, there's the problem right there.
Exactly. It's pretty cool. You start to see things that you wouldn't. And that's kind of the cool thing about that data set too, that Apple trained it on. I mean, they trained it on a ton of different people, ton of different body types. So it's really, really good, no matter if, you're a really skinny guy or a much bigger guy with huge thighs, it's going to be able to pinpoint pretty surely. I mean, there's going to be outliers, right? Somebody that's 500, 600 pounds, it might not have a great job doing that, but mass population, general pop, and even to some of the extremes, it's going to do pretty good finding those joints, finding the points. So
Yeah. Additionally, another thing a lot of the users really enjoy, and I know you can probably attest to this too, is when you're doing those pause and tempo squats, it's damn near impossible to keep that count in your head when you're loaded up on weight. And so using the app and having it call out when you hit those certain parameters that you set, all right, I'm doing a 2.5 second pause squat here. It'll let you know, come through your feedback, and then you're able to come up. So just take all the thinking out. You're just focused on, performing that weight and lifting. So,
yeah. See, that's another great feature too. Like I don't have any of my people do tempos. I'm like, dude, do a slow eccentric. Because even me, I can't count when I'm focused on all too much other shit. My brain, I can't hardly count reps because my brain is focused on other stuff.
Same.
So that was actually the first one you guys started with. When did you come out with that one?
December of 2022, or was that 2023?
I think it was 2022. I think.
No, it was actually 2023.
Yeah,
See,
it was.
It feels like we've been doing this for like 4 or 5 years, and it's only been really like a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
There's been so much happening in the amount of time, but so I guess it was December 2023.
I'm actually a little amazed to hear that it was that short of time.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Because just how the app is and how it works and how far you guys have come, it seems like, damn, you guys did a good job in a year and a half.
Appreciate that. It's been a really cool journey. Right before we actually released that, we kind of hit the lottery on social media. I think we had almost a 2 million view video of just us showing the progression of the time we had spent building it. And as it wasn't released yet at the time, which kind of was a little, it kind of sucked. We missed the mark on getting a lot of new customers through that because we hadn't had it on the market yet. But we got a lot of traction, and then that's really kind of what sped us into the VBT space. Is when that video hit, we had coaches reaching out, and there was this random coach in Maine that had reached out to us and was like, hey, saw your video, wanted to kind of talk to you about velocity-based training. We got on a call with him super early. He was out in Maine, and I just started chatting through the use cases of our product, because we're like, this could be a great, as is to sell to coaches and weight rooms, checking reps, checking depth, just helps get additional eyes on athletes. And so I was kind of talking to him through that. And he's like, listen, if you can take very similar approach with the mobile, with using your phone and getting data to track velocity, I think there's a big opportunity in the velocity-based training space. And at the time we were like, I don't even know what velocity-based training is. Like it was a pretty foreign concept to us, because as you know, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, like there's a very big gateway blocker for getting into this space, because technology, it hasn't been innovated in a decade. It's getting more affordable relative, $450, I think $300 is kind of the lowest price at this point. And then if you want, those higher end devices, you're shelling out $2,000. And so from that conversation, we really started diving into reaching out to coaches here in Arkansas, calling D1, D2, D3 schools all across the state, talking to coaches in our backyard here at the University of Arkansas, and just hearing like, hey, I'm a D1 track coach at the University of Arkansas, or track capital of the world, and we only have 2 Tendo units. That's all we can afford. That's all we use. And they're, cream of the crop program, and they're still wanting to get it at scale for everybody. So we heard the same message all the way down into the high school space. And that really was what motivated us to look into it more. And it's just kind of that propelled where we're at today. So
I think that's a huge market. And like when I first started looking into velocity base, it was the same thing. Like, I think the first kind of inexpensive unit came out within the last few years. Yeah. It was like you had these huge expensive Tendo units, and I'm like, I can't afford that. I can't justify that kind of money right now. And then especially even with like my online clients, I'm like, hey, I'd like you to get one of these devices. They're like, well, how much? And I'm like, it's like $500 or $600. And they're like, well, I could get a new bar, or I could get. They're always like, there was always something else they would rather spend that money on.
Yep, 100%.
And then as soon as I actually saw this unit through Kabuki. And started looking into it, and I called a couple of my online people. I'm like, listen, nothing. Like, because one of them actually, he goes, well, I'm going to try to buy a bar then, because they got the free one. Yeah. And I'm like, it's just a monthly thing, so it's not that bad. And then like, just the more we started playing with it, the more I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty cool, man. And then especially because he could shoot his videos that has everything on it, and then just send them to me.
Yep.
where I
Yeah,
can watch
exactly.
his lift and watch his speed
Yep.
and tell him what he needs to change, or like, no, I want more speed or less speed or whatever. And it's
Right.
actually working out pretty cool, I think.
That's
And I
awesome.
haven't even really delved into what else it can actually, it can probably, I'm not a huge techie guy, so it takes me a while to get all that stuff. But like so far,
Yeah.
it seems pretty simple to me.
Yeah, that's all, and that's great to hear. That's, I mean, yeah, kind of coming back. So we, we heard from that guy, from the guy in Maine, right, that if we could somehow get the app to track velocity, it could be a really big deal. And like Brody said, we started talking to all these other coaches. We started local, we talked to trainers here, we talked to people at the U of A, and we kept hearing the same thing. And then so we also took into account, like, what do people not like about what's currently out there? And that's why I'm glad you said like simple to use, because that's what we heard so much. Other than just affordability, a lot of people think it's just too complicated,
Mm-hmm.
it's like too hard. And so we tried to build something super easy. And also, I mean, it's with the phone in your pocket, so that's, everybody's already used to using that. So yeah, we built it kind of through that lens of just making it really easy and very affordable, but not sacrificing on quality. I mean, so we started building it in, maybe it was like April or May, of last year. And we were still working on TrueRep Squat. We were still adding to that, and that's still on the market too. We're just not really primarily focused on that. We're mainly focused on our VBT app.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, we started building it in April or May, and we spent countless hours, really hammering down the algorithm to track well, and then to count velocity and be super accurate and reliable. And that's kind of, that's the lens that we built it through. We wanted it to be just as accurate, just as reliable as these $500, $2,000 devices, but just be $15 a month.
Yeah.
So spent a lot of time hammering that in, and released it in August, and kind of kept pushing updates over the next couple of months. But we've just been adding in features now. The core algorithm's really there, but yeah.
So you guys are into fitness, but you got to have some intelligence to figure all this shit out. At least in terms of me, I get on computer. I figure out how to do stuff on computers, but it takes me a while.
Oh yeah. I'm not, this one was pretty hard. It was probably the hardest product we've built. It was just the most technically complicated, and it was me and the other co-founder, Luke. He's not here, but Luke's the other technical founder. We're all three the owners. But yeah, Luke and I are the ones that built it. And yeah, it was really complicated. We had to think through, so many things when we're building it. You're trying to, the kind of the hard part is there's two sides of it. You're trying to figure out how can you track something, first of all, right? How can I track the bar or whatever's moving in the scene that you want to get the velocity of? And that's the first problem to solve. And the second one is, okay, once you've done that, how do you figure out what's actually going on there? Because what we want is we want to count reps, and then we want to get average velocity and peak velocity. But we also want to keep out any, bad data. Like, you don't want to count your unrack, right? You don't want that to be counted as a rep. And now sometimes it still is, but you don't want that velocity to be added to the next rep. And you want to make sure to filter out certain things. There's all these things to think about. And that's really what took the bulk of the amount of time to build it, was really hammering out all these different, edge cases and making it work just as good for, a deadlift, for a squat, for a, snatch, whatever it is. And yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I have a couple of my guys like to roll the deadlift out and then roll it back into them and up.
Yep.
And that's even my regular units, they will kind of tweak them sometimes where it won't get a good reading on it when they do that.
Yeah, and that was a use case we had to think about too. Exactly. Like, yeah, it's somebody rolling, because I do the same thing when I'm about to deadlift. I kind of roll it out and then I get going, but we want to make sure not to count that. So there's all these like really specific things that you have to keep in mind. And I mean, we went to Avail University, I think is what it's called.
Avail in Kansas City. They're a big partner of ours out the gate, just helping us understand from the academic research side and the validity of the data, the reliability. And they had a couple I think the strength coach up there, it was either Rep One or Vitruve, but their athletes collected more velocity data than any organization in the entire United States because they were so bought in with using it with all their athletes across the whole university. And so they were one of the schools we called and just kind of talked through. And so there were multiple visits. We had gone up to Kansas City to do some data testing, and they had pretty much every device under the sun for us to test against. And they were big proponents of ours. And Dr. Gerald actually conducted a study that we have. We can send you at a later date, but he tested the validity against a GymAware unit, their RS tethered unit. And so through his research and I think a sample of about 25 athletes, it shows that we are just as consistent and reliable as those GymAwares providing the data. And so that was really helpful for us to just, again, show that we're not blowing smoke. This isn't, just spitting out numbers. This is extremely accurate and reliable within itself. So
we spent a little bit of time up in Kansas City that summer, just trying to refine it and get it perfect, So
I think this is with the auto regulation. This is because I've tried a lot of different auto regulation stuff. And I think this is going to be the most accurate one, velocity. Mm-hmm. And then getting it out, if you can get it out and make it basic, that people can use it. And it seems like that's where you guys are at. Like, hey, a college could use this, but so can the power lifter training in his basement,
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's funny. So we started building it because, we thought our biggest clients were going to be colleges and coaches at universities high schools. And, we do have a lot of clients at that level, but really where we've seen the most success lately has been the powerlifter in his basement or the powerlifting coach, like Kyle from Kabuki, people like that just want to, find a way to auto-regulate and drive intent and kind of spice up their training a little bit too. Like it's a great way to just add in a little bit of motivation when you lift. I mean, that's kind of how I use it. I don't use it on every lift, but especially if I've got a day where I'm just feeling a little bit lazy, I'll throw the magnet on the bar and I'll put in my headphones and I'll have a velocity loss or try to stay within a certain zone. And it'll tell me if I'm, not pushing it hard enough. And it just makes me push a little bit harder. Even if that's only 5 or 10%, I'm thinking about it more. And that's a really interesting concept too. I don't know if you've looked into that or not, but when we were building this out, this was last year, we were doing some research and I came across an article saying that it's actually been proven that when you have the velocity feedback, you do recruit more muscle. It makes you recruit more muscle. I can't remember how much of a difference it was, but that's the whole intent side of it.
You're trying to generate more force.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just by having the feedback that you do that, it's just like, having a coach there that's yelling at you, telling you to move the bar quicker, or, if you can do that for yourself, but
Well, I think it's the same thing. Like you figure if this works for auto regulation and I come in and I'm pushing as hard as I can and I can't really meet that number that I want, okay, then I probably need to drop the weight. Well, it makes sense to me that it would work on the other end. If you come in and feel good, you can motivate you to drive that weight faster.
Exactly.
And one of the interesting things I had in one of my sessions the other day too, because like with Westside Barbell, when they were messing around with this, one of the problems they had is their guys would compete. But they weren't competing with their brain. They were just trying to go faster. So the other day I had one of my teams, we were using it, and all of a sudden they're like, what is Chad wants us to hit 0.7 meters per second. All right. So then one of them hits 8 and he's like, all right, I'm winning. I hit 8. And then the other one's like, shit, no, I got to hit 8. But with my guys, what they were doing is they know that I'm always on them. We're like, technique is smooth and efficient. Smooth is fast.
Sure.
So they're like, shit, I got to get my technique better so I can go faster.
Exactly.
And so as they progressed through the 10 sets, their technique kept getting tighter and tighter and they kept getting faster and faster. And it's like, awesome. If we wouldn't have had that meter for them to see their speed, they probably wouldn't have had that great a session.
100%.
And it actually, if you promote in your clients that, like, listen, you want to get faster, get your technique better.
Yeah, right.
All of a sudden now they're thinking about their technique and getting faster.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, that's a great point to bring up too. Like, because we've got a lot of coaches that's one of the main reasons they use it is to drive intent, get the athletes to lift quicker. And, but you're right. You've still got to think about form, because you can start, okay, I'm just going to move this as fast as possible. But it's not going to benefit you. It's actually probably going to be worse if your form starts to break down dramatically, because you're just trying to move so fast, right?
So that's where, like, when they're not going fast enough, it's like, well, wait a minute, my technique's probably not good then. And if you can get them to think, don't just try to go faster, try to get better. And then go. And they do. Like, my guys have actually seen that. And even some of my online guys have commented on it, where it's like, dude, when my technique's good, my speed's great. When my technique sucks, it's slow.
Right. And that's why we added in the bar path. Because we wanted to be able to correlate those two things. It's a really, you see how the bar is moving, and then immediately after that rep, you get your velocity, right? It's all on the same screen. So you can see, okay, well, actually the form was shit. The bar path was terrible. And that's probably partly why it was going so slow. I see that, like, on my lifts, as I get towards the end of the set, a lot of the times I'm, 20, 30% velocity loss. I've accumulated quite a bit of fatigue, and I'll notice a lot of the reason is because I'm starting to move the bar in a way that I shouldn't. I'm getting a little bit sloppy with it.
Especially in a deadlift or a squat, you start getting forward. That's like adding pounds to the bar. You add pounds to the bar, you're going to slow down.
Exactly. Yeah, I've seen the same thing.
I'm kind of fascinated by you guys. Because I'm thinking, like, it seems pretty smart to come up with this, and, like you said, go through and figure it all out, and then to go, dude, this is a year and a half. You guys did this in a year and a half.
It's
pretty
crazy.
fast.
It feels like a lifetime.
It feels like a long time.
I think we touched on this a little bit. We kind of did an unveil. The product wasn't released on the market yet, but last summer in July, we headed down to where you're at, went to Vegas to the NSCA National Conference that was there last summer, and we put all our chips in. We set up a booth. No one knew who we were. We just had a little banner behind us that said hardware-free velocity training and our little tablecloth. And it was really cool just seeing the interest that was generated from an entirely different approach. Because there's I think there's another hardware device that's hitting the market here soon that their whole thing is affordability and all this stuff, but it's identical to everything that's already on the market. It's the exact same approach, just new branding. And so our approach, just taking, again, the phone in your pocket and this little green magnet that is super simple. And I think that was our biggest benefit, was us having limited knowledge on this as we were building it, because we're like, okay, what is the core of what coaches need to implement and track and use this? And then we built out from there. Every feature we've added on since launch has been from customers coming back and being like, hey, I want this. Oh, well, we heard that 4 times now. Let's get it in. Or a coach coming in and asking for something specific and it making sense. So,
exactly. Yeah, and it's weird to think back. That was, only like 8 or 9 months ago, I guess. But yeah, that was when we unveiled the VBT app. And it was also interesting too. We got a lot of interest from PTs. I wasn't really expecting that, but it makes sense in the rehab space. And we've seen a lot more of that recently too. But yeah, that's where.
What do the PTs like about it?
They really like it for, like, assessing differences between, like, say,
like right and left sides.
Exactly.
Ooh, see, that's an interesting idea too.
Yeah, right. We thought so too. It was pretty cool idea. So that's one way. And not only assessing difference in velocity, but also range of motion. That's another thing too, right? You can see how limber one side is compared to the other. And then also, there's a rehab clinic here locally called Train, Recover, Move, and they help, basically it's university athletes. It's a lot of Arkansas athletics, the track team,
We get
the
some
football team.
Olympians.
Yeah, they get some Olympians. So that's who they're mainly working with. And they wanted to figure out a way to get them back to not only a place where they feel comfortable and where they feel, but also get them back to athleticism.
Yeah.
And they really, really like the idea of being able to track velocity and be able to push their clients to actually move faster, once it's safe. But it's a really good way for them to be able to get back into that and drive the intent, because what they were saying is a lot of the times their clients will be kind of afraid and won't exactly know how to push quicker, or it's almost like they've forgotten, and it's a good way to kind of bring them back into that. So
and instead of like adding more weight to be stronger on a lift, you have a meter and go, listen, we need you to keep increasing the speed back up.
Exactly.
But just think, if you had an athlete that had been doing velocity training, gets hurt, now you can go, well, we need to get you back to this because we actually know where you are at.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And then, I was going to say on that, and then like basically you're able to continually set new PRs with those athletes and rebuild their confidence to do exactly that.
Yeah.
And they want to try to position it to where it's a so much smoother transition when that athlete's handed back off to that strength coach. That strength coach isn't having to start from ground zero. They're pretty much locked and ready to roll.
Right.
So there's definitely been a lot of generated interest recently in that space. But
I do walks every morning, and I was thinking about this podcast coming up. And do you guys know what a glute ham raise is?
I don't know.
It's kind of this. It's kind of like a reverse hyper, only you're laying face down, and basically what you're going to do is your legs are going to be locked in, and you're going to curl up. So it's like a Nordic curl.
Okay.
And those are one of the greatest hamstring exercises I think is in the world. But a lot of people don't do them explosively enough.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, how can I put that magnet on? I'm like, do I create an armband that has a little piece of metal I can stick to it?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this is one that people do way too slow.
Right.
And if I could hook this meter up to them, man, that would be great to get people to go, this needs to be an explosive movement.
100%. Yeah.
That's the really cool and unique approach, since we have a magnet. You're not limited to a barbell, kettlebells, dumbbells. I mean, I can't tell you the one-off random Instagram DMs we've got. I'm not making this up. Last week, I think I got reached out by a professional shooter, and he's like, "Can I stick this magnet on the side of my gun and get the velocity of my draw?" I'm like, I mean, theoretically it can be used that way. Obviously, we haven't tested or used it in that use case, but people want to put it on their bodies and get their launch time, their velocity on their when they're the swimmers, when they're launching out the gate. We've had some like horse riders. I mean, it's been random, and it's pretty cool because if you can stick it, the camera can see it. We can get you data on it.
Right.
So,
yeah. And you brought up like some kind of like holster almost for the magnet, or like a hip, something to put on the hip. It's actually something we've thought about, and we might potentially build out because we've had so many people ask for something like that.
Yeah.
Like it's for something like that where you're doing kind of like a leg curl but laying down, right? You need to attach it somewhere on the hip or the leg, or wherever. But also for jump testing, that's been a really big one. We've heard a lot. Especially strength and conditioning coaches, they want to see, range of motion and velocity on it, right? And we've just been telling people to, just hold a really light dumbbell at your side, because that's the best way to do it right now. Just hold like a 1 pound dumbbell and just put the magnet on it and go. But yeah, we might actually be building something that you could stick on your body, right? And it could hold the magnet. And then, as long as you have the camera pointed at it, you're good to go. As long as the magnet stays in frame the whole time, it'll give you.
Yeah, it's like the first thing that popped into my head is a little Velcro stretchable band that has just a little metal piece in it, which you could just sew into it. And I go, that'd be solve it right there. That'd be pretty easy to do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's partly too why we didn't. There's a couple ways we could have gone about this. We had a few ideas. One would be just tracking the barbell, or just tracking like a plate. Not having anything extra. And part of the reason we didn't go that route is because, for one, we wanted to be as accurate as possible. And we think the best way to do that at least right now, is with something that we know the size of in the scene, and that's the magnet. And we could definitely still do a really great job doing some kind of machine learning and finding a barbell or finding a plate in the scene. It's just we thought it could be maybe even just like 2 or 3% better with the magnet, so that we went that way. But the other reason was, you, like Brody said, you can stick it on anything. That's, if we went with just like a barbell detection model, we'd be limited to just getting velocity of barbells. So
Right.
that's one of the other big reasons, we went that route. So you can get the velocity of kind of whatever you want. So, or the range of motion too. That's another big thing.
Yeah, that's because I was thinking about on my walk this morning. I was also thinking about how else it could be used in training and even going into pretty much any accessory exercise.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on what you're doing, if you're trying to do hypertrophy or something, it's probably not going to change a whole lot. But I mean, a lot of people do a lot of different movements way too slow.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and you could change that. Still, the biggest thing for me though is accommodating resistance. I mean, with the bands and the chains. And literally, it's like so simple to set it up and put it on a bar and do this.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, the vast majority of people do accommodating resistance training way too heavy. I continually see on Instagram, they're like, oh, this was speed day. I go, that's speed? Like, that's not even close.
Yeah.
And even the funny thing for me, as long as I've been doing this for a long time, I just did it by sight.
Gotcha.
And then when I started getting meters on it, I was like, wow, I was off.
Yeah,
that wasn't as fast as I wanted. I thought it was good, but it actually wasn't as fast. But to have that set, here it is every time, and you can do it for $15 a month.
Right.
Like,
exactly. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think there's so many different avenues that it could go.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah.
And even, I don't know how much you guys have looked into it or how much you guys are using it, but even for like accommodating resistance and warming up, you can kind of see where you're at and adjust all your stuff based on that day.
100%. That's really one of the biggest benefits. And I meant to mention that when I was talking about how I use it personally, but that's the other huge thing we see, especially with powerlifters. And Kyle can talk about this too, but like on meet day, for instance, or even leading up to the meet, if you knew how strong you were, and you'll get it by the day, because if as long as you have a few different weights, if you record like 3 warm-up sets and you just see how those velocities are tracking, like how you're doing, you can plot, and it's called linear regression. You just use linear regression to see, okay, this is, I did 135 at 0.7 meters per second. I did 185 at 0.5 meters per second. I did 225 at 0.4 meters per second. It's trending like this. And your minimum is say 0.15 meters per second for a bench. Let's say you're doing bench. Well, then you can use linear regression to see where that line of velocities crosses the minimum. And that's your daily 1 rep max. It's your 1 rep max in that moment, which could be fluctuating by 15 to 20% every single day. So it's a great way to be able to, see on a daily basis, how strong am I really, right? Instead of, and Kyle talks about this a lot, we talk about this a lot too, instead of going off of feelings, that's terrible, right? Or going off of how it looks, that's also not good, because you'll get misled. Instead, using the actual data, and we in the app we have load velocity profiles, so you can do it real easy. You just have to slap the magnet on, point the camera, and just record your warm-up sets, and then you go to the load velocity profile tab, and it'll tell you with a certain accuracy what that 1 rep max is based on your previous 3 sets. So,
See, that's really cool.
Yeah,
because like you said, and I've, my best squat was about 1,200 pounds, but there are same times in that training session where I'd walk in and 800 felt like a house.
Yeah.
So I'm like, people go, I'm a 1,000-pound squatter. I go, well, on what day?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you peaked to be that on that particular day, and everything. You can't do that every day.
Exactly. No.
Like, I remember Chris Duffin tried to do like 800-pound deadlift every day for a month, and he just destroyed himself. Like, you can't do that. It's not what it is. And people get so set on that. And I think either they don't hit what they want, so they get disappointed in themselves when they shouldn't, or what you have that aggressive personality of a power lifter, and then they get pissed off and they get mad and they just keep trying harder and harder, and it's like all you're doing is digging yourself a hole. Like,
right. Yeah.
With this, you can go, listen, today this is my max. So here's what I'm going to try to hit in the gym. Exactly. And you're not going to do anything crazy. And like when I first started powerlifting, I was doing linear periodization. So basically you back up 12 to 16 weeks from the meet, and then you're like, I'm going to decrease my reps and increase my percentages. But what do you do when one of those days is bad? Because you're basing it off.
Right.
I'm this strong. This is my max, but it's not your max every day. Like we're just not, we're humans. We change. It's different. And this takes that guessing away. And I would like to think if people could just even kind of grasp the concept, go, here's my speed. So today is my max effort. This is basically where my max is. Now I can judge my movement off of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it'll completely change training.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's cool because even at the highest level, we see that translated down all the way to the high school space. So there's a company here that called PowerX, and Arkansas is definitely behind most of the country as far as like dedicating time and resources to strength training in the public education space. And so they have a couple contracts with some high schools here, and they're outsourced for all their strength and conditioning. And especially with high school athletes, I mean, there's so many things that go into their daily readiness for their bodies. Some of these kids aren't sleeping, they're not getting nutrition, all this stuff. And so for them to be able to, hey, we're going to set a zone today. You're going to set up your device based on the color. I don't care what weight you think you should be doing or you want to be doing or what your buddy's doing. If you're not in this zone, we're not going to go above or below because your body can't handle it today. And so as coaches, they're able to take everything into account with something as simple as stick within this zone. If it's red, yellow, green, you're going to know to adjust the weight accordingly. But that's now your Bible. That's what you're going to go off of when you're lifting. And so you can see it being used at the highest level, and then even at the more junior athletes that are still getting into this as they're growing up. Like it's helpful for everybody.
Well, I think I think when it comes down to like the beginners and especially the kids, the high school kids, this is going to be a great thing because we all know there's the kids that either don't push themselves enough, and now they're going to have to kind of push themselves to hit that speed. So like you talked about earlier, it's going to teach them how to like generate that speed. And then the kids that would normally go heavier than hell no matter what, and their technique would just go to shit because they're just like, get it up. I don't care as long as it goes up. Now they're going to have to stay within a weight that's within their realm and their speed. So it's actually long-term is going to help them build better technique.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's simple enough where, these coaches can very easily have the kids do it by themselves. That's the auto regulation. They're just looking at the velocity. They're not even looking at the weight. And then it also takes, it takes all the ego lifting out of it. Like you were saying, you're not going to have some kid that's trying to load up 3 plates when he should only be doing 2. And because it's just going to be stay within this zone, right? It's not about the weight. It's about how fast you're moving it. And then it correlates to, percentages of your 1 rep max, right? So it's a really easy way for a coach too to basically still use something like percentage-based training, but you can map that right over to velocity zones.
Yeah.
And then, if you're having a great day and, the weight's just flying, well, you're actually going to be able to put on more weight because the app's going to tell you if, say you wanted to stay between 0.6 and 0.65, well, maybe 135 or 185 is moving for this kid at, 0.75 today. And he actually needs to add on more weight. So he's going to be able to do more based on his daily strength. And then, the day he needs to pull back because last night, he was up till 2 a.m. playing video games. He's going to lower the weight a little bit.
Yeah.
But so it's pretty cool. And then as a power lifter, you can go in and let's say you're running a percentage-based training program, right? And you're supposed to do 90% or 85% of your 1 rep for, 3 sets of, 3 or 3 sets of 5 or whatever it is. Instead of going off of a static 1 rep max that you tested 2 months ago, you're going off of what your 1 rep max is today based on the velocities of the day. Right?
Yeah.
And it's so powerful. Like it's so useful. And I think if people knew more about it, they would be, all over it. And there's a lot more people getting into it now, but it's still kind of complicated for people. I think that's one thing that holds people back, is it seems tricky and it seems complicated, but really it's not. I mean, it's just, that's something we were talking about the other day, is velocity based training. That name, it's kind of misleading.
Yeah.
Really, it's more like velocity influenced training. You're just using data to tell you more about what you should do, or to drive the intent, to make yourself push harder. It's not like you're not basing everything around it. You're just using it to make your training better,
more efficient.
So, yeah, more efficient. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of
it actually helps. If I think about it, it actually helps to motivate you to do a little more on those days, and then pulls you back a little bit from doing too much on the other days.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Keeps you from injuring yourself.
Because most of the stuff I looked up to into like the auto regulation is building actual like a personalized velocity. But I wonder if there's not like general speeds. Like if somebody wanted to get into it, go, listen, you're just getting into it. Here's these general velocities to hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, on that, our zones are based off of Dr. Brian Mann. He did.
Yes.
He set those zones, and I think it was with a pool of D1 athletes. So it's still at the D1 level. But those are generally what he had researched and decided were those zones to target speed strength, all the way up to absolute strength. And so that's what we based everything on in the app off of when you mess with our zones. And so that's kind of been our benchmark.
But that's a good point you bring up too, though. I mean, most people will be, like for strength, it's going to be pretty similar for most people.
Yeah.
But, like powerlifters usually can grind out reps a little bit slower. Right. And that's something we take.
Some of them, though, that varies too. Like some people can, some people can't.
Exactly. And that all comes back to, what is your muscle built up of more? Is it built more of type 1 or type 2, fast twitch or slow twitch, right? And depending on your muscle composition is going to determine how fast or how slow you can move weight, right? And we went to this session last week. Was it last week or
maybe 2 weeks ago?
A couple weeks ago on velocity-based training in the rehab space, and it was put on by TrueRep, that company that we talked about earlier. And they had Olympian?
Yeah, he's some Olympian shot player. I can't think of his name. He holds multiple world records, collegiate records. He's
right. He's top notch. Yeah, best of the best. And he was talking about how, for him, a maximum effort squat is like 0.4 meters per second, which is, to most people, that's still pretty quick, right?
That's still pretty fast. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still pretty fast. But he's been training his whole life for athleticism, right? And for shot put. So it didn't ever make sense for him to be really training for absolute strength. And really, if you don't train for that and you're training to be quicker, that's how you're going to be set up, right?
Yes.
So it's really interesting. Yeah, for him, the zones would be much, much different. But for the vast majority of people, it will be pretty similar. You're going to be usually around a 0.18 meters per second on your max bench, and I think it's like 0.15 for max squat, and maybe it's 0.2 for max deadlift, and that's like generally where you're going to be at. And then you can kind of base everything around that. And then load and velocity, they're linearly correlated. So that's why you can figure out pretty easily, 1 rep max and all that kind of stuff. But
so like if somebody's like, I don't know about building this profile and all this stuff, it's like, no, you can actually get the meter.
Yeah.
And just start training with it. And on your max effort day, you go, man, that one was like, 0.16. Yep. So I'm going to call it right there. That's pretty close to my max. So I hit 95% or whatever, I'm good. Where if you don't have that meter, people like, well, now we're feels. How did it feel? I feel like I can do more. And like with somebody like me, you could, dude, I don't care what it is. It'll be a slow grinder. And I'm like, I can do more. I can do more. I can do more. And then I end up doing all these beyond failure reps, which is just kicking my butt and not actually helping me at all.
Right.
And then as it seems like to me, anybody could just start like that. And if you're happy and you got results, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But if you want more results, then you kind of start learning as you go. And I've always been one of those guys like, dude, just jump in. Like you're not going to learn it all and
sure.
then go do it properly. You got to go do it. You just got to do it.
Exactly. That's the thing, right? You just kind of got to get started, and don't make it too complicated. Just start with,
keep it simple.
just use it. Yeah. Just keep it simple. Just use it to, see how fast you're moving on a daily basis, just to make you move a little quicker. Maybe on the days where you're feeling lazy, or just to keep yourself honest, and, use the bar path, right? That's another huge thing we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Just to see, see where your form breaks down and how that affects how you're moving the weight, right? And then you can start getting a little bit more advanced from there, and figuring out, okay, what's my minimum velocity for squat, bench, and deadlift, and then I can see, okay, based on that, this is what my 1 rep max is going to be if I have these velocities on these weights. And like I said, the app takes care of all the heavy work for you. All you do is put it on, record your lift, and then if you have 3 sets at 3 different weights, it'll give you what it thinks the daily 1 rep max is based on that, if you know your minimum velocity accurately, right? That's the main key point, like, because we're basing it off of generally, like I said, most people at like a 0.18 meters per second on a bench for their maximum effort lift. But if you're at 0.15, well, you can put that in and it'll change it a little bit. You'll be able to actually lift a little bit more. But
right.
Just start simple and then kind of go from there. So
yeah, it's pretty. And I train all kinds of different people and athletes, and it's like I don't need my football player to squat 1,000 pounds. Yeah. But if he's a lineman, he's pushing around 400-pound guys. So I want him to squat 6 or 7 with a decent velocity.
Right.
And if I'm training a thrower, or if I'm doing Highland games, I know 1,000-pound squat doesn't mean shit throwing a 16-pound ball. But I need to be able to do 400 or 500 like it's lightning.
Exactly.
And I can adjust. It's a whole lot easier to adjust your training for that day and going, hey, okay, stay at this weight because it's at the speed. We're training speed. We're not training weight.
Right.
And I think it takes, it just takes all that feel out of it, where it's like, well, that felt fast.
Yeah.
I mean, I've actually had arguments in the gym with my training partners where I'm like, that was fast. And they're like, bullshit, that was slow as hell. And I'm like, no, it was fast. And it's like, you get this and you go, here it is, right? Here's the number right here, dude.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I've had the same thing happen to me. It's like, you think it's doing great. You think you're moving it really quick. And people are like, damn, I don't know how you got that up.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes sometimes, or alternatively, like, you think it moves slow and somebody's like, well, that was actually pretty quick, right? Or you look back at the video you took and it's actually moving really good. So it's really interesting how that works.
Which I think that builds over time. Cause like I've actually had clients be like, holy shit, it was that fast. Yeah. It's like, yeah, but your technique was good and it was efficient. Yeah. It was a smooth movement. That's why it was fast. And then now they're getting that mental feedback of like, okay, well, that's how I want it to feel.
Yeah.
And I think over time, it's going to clean up technique and make a much better movement for them.
I think so too. Absolutely. For sure. Yeah. And, something else I wanted to bring up too that's pretty beneficial in the app is velocity loss. So you can set that, you want, and loss is just, I'm sure you know this, but for anybody that's listening, it's just how much has my velocity changed over the set, right? So if my first rep was 0.9, let's just use 1 meters per second because that's a really easy number, and I got down to 0.8 meters per second by the 10th rep, well, I accumulated 20% velocity loss. Mm-hmm. So they say usually 40% is about the maximum that you can go. That's like maximum hypertrophy. And at that point, that's when you've used up pretty much everything in the tank. So in the app, you can turn this on. It's a mode, and you can select, I want a notification. I want the chime changes, and you can set it to happen at 10%, 20%, 30%, or 40%. So if you're really training for hypertrophy, or if you're still wanting to train for strength, but maybe you don't want to go heavy that day, and you want to exhaust all your muscle, which will end up recruiting more of the slow twitch muscle fibers, you can set the velocity at 40%, and you just go until it dings, until it gives you that negative chime. So you don't even think, you're just moving the weight as long as it takes until you get to that point. Or, if you don't want to accumulate too much fatigue because maybe you've got a meet coming up, or maybe you've got a game tomorrow, you set it at 20% and you make sure you're not doing too much.
Yeah.
Right. But that's another really easy way to just get started with it.
That's interesting too, because even in terms of accommodating resistance,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times people get so set on the sets and reps. Like, I have to do this. This is what it says.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my first, way back early when I started powerlifting, I went to a seminar with Dave Tate of Elite FTS. And the next day he's like, I'm coming back and I'm doing a dynamic training session for anyone who wants to come. And I'm like, like, you're not charging me extra? Fuck yeah, I'm coming. And so we started doing our dynamic bench. And after like 6 sets, he's like, Chad, you're done. And I'm like, bullshit, I'm going to get every goddamn set. Like, don't tell me I can't do it. And like, I'm getting pissed off. And he's like, no, he goes, your speed is slowing down. And your technique is starting to fail. There's no point in you doing any more.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's kind of something too, when you're doing your sets and your speed. Once your speed starts to fall, that tells you you're done. It doesn't matter what the program said. Like, and I think that's a good thing that to, again, like you said, help regulate people. And if you had, a hard max effort and you're like, okay, I need to do my supplemental stuff because it's important, but I don't want to go too far. Now you can read and go, okay, this is basically, this is it. This is where I need to stop.
Yep. Exactly.
And there's no feels or guessing games or any of that shit anymore.
Yep. It's funny. We talk about that a lot. It's like, fuck the feelings. It's just, that doesn't matter. Just look at it matters to an extent, right?
Yeah.
But like, it's just much better to have an objective measurement if you can,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the big key piece here is just having that data.
What would be interesting with that too is the people that don't push enough.
Right. Exactly.
We're like, I want you to go like, stop count. I don't even care how many reps you do.
Yep.
I want you to do this weight until your velocity drops to this.
100%. Yeah. That,
and then they actually, because I have clients I train in person now. And if I'm doing like some HIIT training or something with them, they're like, that's it, I'm done. And I'm like, nope, 3 more.
Yeah.
And they'll get 3 more and they get done and they turn around and they go, I thought I was done. How did I get those other 3?
Exactly. Yeah. That's kind of one of the other sides of it, right? Yeah. Like you might be stopping at 20% loss almost every time. And you're not accumulating nearly enough fatigue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what you're training for, but yeah, and it'll keep you really honest. Like I've had that happen to me before where I'm lifting, I'm waiting for that negative chime to come in and it's not coming. I'm like, damn, this is getting really hard. And I've got 3 more reps in the tank. And I just wasn't going quite hard enough. I thought I was, but I wasn't. So it's really good on that side of things too. And that's another huge thing for coaches to be able to kind of like teach that, because a lot of times people don't know how to really push hard at first, especially, and they don't know exactly where that is or what that means to really like go to failure. But it's a good way to teach it.
Yeah.
So.
Especially when you think about like high school kids and stuff.
Yeah.
People that have never done it, like they have no idea what it's like to actually push beyond like a little bit of uncomfort.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's actually something that doesn't get talked about much with velocity training, but
no, it doesn't. And I'm kind of surprised on it because it's such an easy way to use it. Everybody always talks about auto-regulation and there's a few other things, but mainly it's always auto-regulation, right? And that's great. It's a huge benefit to using velocity, but there's a lot more than that, right? You can do so much with it. So.
Yeah, I think I know. I had Paul or Josh Bryant from Jailhouse Strong, and we were kind of talking about there really is 2 kinds of people. There's very few that are in the middle, and it's the people that push too damn hard that need to be pulled back, and then the people that don't push enough. And to be quite honest, there's more people that don't push hard enough than there is people that push too hard.
Right. Exactly. And that's something too, like people, sometimes we get comments from people saying, well, let's just lift the weight. It's like, well, hey, we're doing that too. We're just kind of measuring, right? We're just measuring where it's at. And we're all about lifting the weight. We're all about lifting the weight hard and fast and doing it. And that's kind of one of the huge points is let's push. right?
Yeah.
And let's be honest on exactly how much work we've done, So yeah, it's a
And
big
I
question.
mean, it just seems like you have to have metrics. You got to track something.
Yeah.
So now you have a much more valuable metric to me in tracking your velocity.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
also, if you start tracking your velocity and your speeds, start looking at your recovery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
For sure.
you're like, God, I wish I want to lift more weight. Well, you're not getting enough sleep. You're not eating enough, and now you have your velocity to go. This is where I'm at, and see. Hey, start sleeping instead of sleeping 5 hours a night. Start sleeping 7, and then
Right.
see how much more weight you're lifting at those velocities.
That's true.
And see how many days you come in and your max, based on your warm-ups, your max is higher than what it normally is because you're
Right.
actually
Just take it
recovering
out.
and ready to go.
Yep. Yep. That's definitely a great way to do it. Yeah, I was curious, like, how much do you use velocity in your training that you do?
I'm going to be using it more. Honestly, I've just been using it for dynamic work.
Gotcha.
Because just so many people I know, their dynamic is way too slow, and they can't get past the weight on the bar.
Yeah.
Like they're so hung up on how much weight is in the bar. And then as soon as I give them one of these meters and they're like, oh, so you're saying the weight doesn't matter, the speed matters. And I'm like, I've been saying that the whole goddamn time. You just didn't have a way to look at it.
Yeah.
But the more I'm looking into it and the more I'm thinking about it, like I do want to get more into like almost where it's like at every session.
Yeah.
Like at least with your main movement. But I could see where it could be potentially cool for all the different movements and then learning how, I mean, say even if you do hit training, and you're doing one set to just crazy as far as you can go, there's still always a too far.
Yeah.
And this could help, and you go, dude, my velocity's way down to like, like a 40% loss. That stimulated growth. And the idea is stimulate growth to the level that you want, then get the hell out of the gym.
Yeah. Exactly.
And a lot of people, there's a lot of like aggressive people like me who I love lifting weights. Like I've been doing it for 40 years.
Yeah.
Like I love doing it. So I have to go, Chad, no, you're out, get out. Like you already been here an hour and 20 minutes. It's point of no return. Get out.
Yep.
I just like doing it. And
Yeah,
so if I have something where I can see an actual number or something, it's easier for me to go, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like I did what I needed to do. I'll go eat and sleep and recover and all that shit.
And recover. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's, I used to do the same thing. I used to work out for like 2 hours every time. And part of that was because, you end up talking to people and it takes longer, but I would be doing way too much. It was kind of getting to the negative, right? And it was partially because I didn't know exactly how much I was working. And I just loved it. I loved being in there. It was a great stress reliever. And, I was, especially during college when I was going to school, I would just go for, like 2 hours at a time. And it ended up being almost too much. And I got a couple of injuries because of it. I was trying to lift so much weight. I was trying to lift too much for my body, or at least at the time. I was just trying to push too hard, too fast, letting form break down because of it. Yeah, I try to do better now, and I'm kind of watching what I'm doing a little bit more closely. And velocity helps a lot with that.
Yeah.
Helps me kind of see how much did I actually do, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just volume, instead of just pounds lifted, I can actually look at literally like how much power did I generate, right? That's another cool thing too, which I don't really use that a ton, but you could. I mean, you could look at it by how many watts did I generate, right? Which is kind of a unique way to look at it. A lot of people don't use that, but that's like a similar thing to volume. It just takes into account intensity instead of just weight and reps. So
I was just gonna say that because I've done a lot of velocity training, and I like to discuss velocity with people that are big velocity people, because it's like, well, what is velocity? Define. Are you talking velocity in reps and sets? Are you talking velocity in pounds lifted? Are you counting your warm-ups? Like if you just get stronger, you increase your velocity or your volume, I mean.
Right.
But even at that, so you went in and you didn't have much intensity on it and you lifted really light, but you got a whole bunch of volume.
Right.
That's quite a bit different than going in with a lot of intensity. So it would be better to track, if you want to track volume, it seems to me it would be better to track force or watts or something like that that's more definitive on actually your volume.
Yeah, it's like you get more of like a 3D look at it versus just like a 2D. It's just a lot more of an idea of how that session actually went, so yeah.
Yeah, that shot putter we mentioned earlier, that's all he works with is the power and the wattage. When he was walking through how he uses it in his training, because his whole thing is focusing on his peak zone. And so because him making a 1% increase in his peak is him throwing it, 10 more feet,
Yes.
10 more, and that's him breaking more records. And so he's a very specific use case at the highest level, but he sticks with power. That's his main metric as opposed to average.
But I think there's a lesson in that though. I know with powerlifters, I try to convince a lot of powerlifters like, I'm not an athlete, I'm just a lifter. And I'm like, but you are an athlete, and part of the problem why you're not stronger is that you don't look at yourself as an athlete.
That's true.
Like every other athlete that I know, and I talked about this in one of my other podcasts. I was talking to one of my, he's an IFL football player, indoor football league. And I was telling him I go, man, I have so many powerlifters that I'm like, dude, you're overtraining, man. Like you need to back off. And they don't want to back off. Like, even if I go, have you tried backing off? No, I just know it won't work. I'm like, have you tried doing more? They go, yeah, I got hurt. I'm like, so you don't know. You're telling me it doesn't work, but you've never tried it.
Yeah.
Right.
And like I was talking to my football player, and he's like, dude, you tell me I need to take time off. I'm like, how long? Like, how long do you want me to stay out of here? And it's because athletes are lifting to be better at their sport.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And powerlifters, I think, need to understand that you're lifting to be better at your squat, bench, and deadlift in competition.
Yes.
You're not doing a competition every time you're in the gym.
Right.
And then I go back to kind of what you said earlier, and I was really bad about this for most of my life. Like training was how I regulated how I felt and how I dealt with life.
Yeah.
So the gym wasn't, it was kind of about, I'm doing it to get stronger, but really I was doing it to regulate my fucking feelings.
Yeah.
Like, to keep the stress down and all this other stuff. And it's like, if we can change our perspective, like you can go to the gym and relieve all that stress and stuff, but you could have your velocity meter and go, I'm going to go as fast as I can with this weight. I'm going to hit this velocity. And my technique has to be perfect. And I mean, if you do all that stuff, I think you're going to walk away from the gym with the same feeling you had before, but you're actually going to make better gains and you're actually going to feel better.
Right.
And you're not going to be so overtrained. So the next day, instead of waking up beat up and totally horrible beat to shit, you're going to wake up going, I'm a little sore because I worked, but I feel good.
Right. Exactly.
And with powerlifters, a lot of it is central nervous system overtraining over the muscular overtraining.
Right.
And so a lot of that has to do with the force output and how much stress you're actually putting on the CNS. And I think that's where like the velocity comes in big time for powerlifters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really cool way to think about it. Like, I completely agree. Most powerlifters, especially, they train to just get stronger and maybe even just stronger in the gym. It seems like, and athletes are they're really meticulous about how they're training. It all comes back to the game, right? How am I going to perform in this game or, in this match or whatever. Right. And, I think that could be something that, powerlifters could take away from it is just being a little bit more specific and trying to be a little bit more efficient. And, again, you're still doing the same thing. You're still going in there. Like you said, you're just getting a little bit more out of each workout, maybe, and instead of stacking a lot of weight on at once, maybe you're just getting a little bit better, at smaller amount, but consistently. Right. And that's where, you're not beating yourself up every single time, but, like you said, you go home and you're sore, but you still feel good to work out the next time. And if you stack up a lot of sessions like that, well, that's how you really make a lot of growth, and you don't have the setbacks from the injuries. And so,
you can only get so strong so fast.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think people think that they can force that and make that happen faster.
For sure.
And I don't think they can. I mean, you can only get. I've never known anyone that got strong really fast.
Yeah.
You do. Unfortunately, with social media, you see people that just popped out of nowhere, and you're like, "Holy shit, where'd that guy come from?" But when you look into it, it's like, yeah, he's been training for 15 years, and he just figured out he has Instagram.
Right. Yeah, like when Larry Wheels joined Instagram, you know, like back in 2018, 2019, or whenever he blew up, and everybody's like, oh my God, you know, and he is a freak of nature too.
He's definitely a genetic freak, yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Makes me think of Sam.
Yeah.
His kind of blow up, you know.
Definitely.
I know people were freaking out about his kind of transformation from high school to where he is now and traction he's gained in the space. And
but you don't see all the
you don't see everything leading up
years
to it.
before, right? All the consistent sessions and yeah, pushing hard, right? Pushing really hard, but you know, there's a way to do it right.
Yeah. And I think more and more, like a lot of the guests that I've had on, and I have a bunch of my older competitive powerlifter buddies that we're all leaning more into pushing, like, dude, it's consistency. You know, it's not trying to get these huge numbers all the time. And Jim Wendler, I had him on just recently. He came up with the 531 training program.
Yeah.
And he trains high school kids now. And he's like, yeah, just consistent. It's not about like, I don't push him to these 1 rep max all the time. Like, we're pushing consistency, get better every day. Instead of beating you up where you're only in the gym a couple days, I would rather have you in the gym more days, lifting lighter, being more consistent. And then every time he has the kids PR, they put up huge PRs, like consistently all year.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where I think the velocity thing is going to be one of the things that can kind of get people to go. It's not the weight. It's not about the weight on the bar. I mean, that's your end goal. I want to squat more. But you can't be thinking I want to squat more every single time I want to go in. It's like a sport. That's your sport. But in the gym, you don't look at it like I'm trying to PR every single day.
Exactly. Right. And really, I mean, you don't want to do that super often, right? Because that's just getting you closer and closer to potential of an injury. If you're going to maximal effort all the time, that's, you know, formula for something to go wrong. And that's what's so cool too about the velocity data is just, and you don't really have to test 1 rep max much because you're getting a pretty damn good idea of what that is, you know, any day that you lift. You need to test it occasionally, and especially, you know, in the beginning, if you really want to have an accurate 1 rep max estimation, you need to know pretty accurately that I can really only bench to 0.15 meters per second. That way we know what the minimum is. But after that, you don't need to test it a whole lot. And you don't really need to get super close. You could do, you know, weights up to 75%, maybe even 80% of 1 rep max. And that would give you a really good estimation of what that 1 rep max is.
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of powerlifting, you know, you have to practice for your sport.
Yep.
And I think the newer you are, the more often you got to kind of push that to 90, 95.
Yeah.
But like a lot of lifters, as you get stronger and get older, your recovery is not as good. With velocity, I can still kind of test my progress without actually having to test. Like, I felt heavyweight, my technique's good. I don't have to lift heavy all the time.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, at this point in my life, I can go out and bench heavy, I don't know, once every freaking month or something, and I'm still fine. Like, my technique's not going to go to shit.
Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting. So I'm thinking about like apps you could make. Like, there's so many technical things that I'm like, dude, could you make an app that would look at people's wrists when they bench?
Oh yeah, I mean,
like the angle. One of the big ones is the angle when you come down right here. Like, if you can see here, I'll move my camera. Like, when people come down right here, a lot of times they'll be either like this or they're like this. And I'm like, well, you're doing a tricep extension. You want to bench the most, you know, a straight line. And I'm thinking, with your guys' knowledge, like, could you make apps to like fix people's technique?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's you know, like I was saying, really with TrueRep squat, that was kind of our whole. I guess, well, it really started with just depth check, but it evolved into more than that, and it was more a whole holistic like form check for squat, just for squat. But we wanted it to be a lot more than just checking depth, and you could apply the same kind of thing to a lot of different, exercises, a lot of different lifts. And it's really the main thing for anytime you're trying to build an app is you just have to figure out, like if you want to track the wrist, for instance, or something like that, we would just need to have a way to be able to find it in the image. And that's where pose estimation comes in. And that's why it's so cool. It can find all these points on the human body. I think it's like 17 or 18 joints that it has. And that's Apple's model. Google has a model that's like 30 joints. Like it gets really specific, and you can do all kinds of hand tracking. And they even give you like it's still a theoretical estimate, but it's a Z coordinate. So not just, X and Y, but you can see how far away from the camera it is. And from that, you can really start to get like a more overall view of how somebody's moving. And there's a lot you can do with that. It's super cool stuff.
Yeah, the depth one's interesting because I see I'll see people at competitions. I had a guy do a competition this last weekend, and all their teammates that they train with are like, man, why didn't they give you depth? Like that was a depth. And I'm like, it obviously wasn't it. So you've been telling him the whole time in training he's hitting depth and he's not.
Yeah.
So if there was something to go, listen, here's depth. I don't care what you guys think.
Right.
This is what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it's subjective, but I mean,
yeah,
it's interesting.
It is. It is really interesting. I mean, it's held us accountable a lot of the times. Like when I go to the gym and I'm trying to load up some weight on squat, and it'll tell you for sure if you're hitting it or not.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's again just instead of thinking I'm hitting this or having somebody else tell you, it's again using something a little bit more objective. It's going to be the same every single time. And
your buddy who just wants to give you good news.
Yeah.
Dude, exactly. No, tell me the truth, man.
Tell me the truth. You need to get down. I remember when I first started lifting years ago, my brother, I was so excited because I got up to like a 315 squat, and I thought that was a ton of weight. It was like 16, 17. But I was doing, the cardinal sin. I was only quarter squatting. I wasn't going down nearly deep enough. I was just trying to get as much weight as I could. And he humbled the shit out of me. He was like, you got to go way farther. And we dropped the weight all the way down to like 185. But he told me, and it was great because that's what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
Somebody to tell me I wasn't going nearly deep enough. And from then on, I've always squatted to depth, obviously. But yeah, it's pretty good to have something objective, and it's your friend's not always going to tell you the truth, right?
Yeah. So right now, you guys are focusing on the velocity part of the business?
Yeah. So that's mainly where we're at right now. I mean, we've still got TrueRep Squat on the App Store, and we still do market it some, but our main focus is VBT, and all technical effort pretty much goes to VBT as well. It just seems to be kind of the most fruitful for us as a business. There's a lot of people that they can use this to enhance their coaching business or, to help with their powerlifting career, whatever it is. And people just really want it. So yeah, we're really focused on that, and we'll continue building it out and building, more features in as people request. But we try to keep it pretty simple and pretty to the point in the app. We don't want it to be too cluttered. We see that with a lot of apps. There's almost too much going on, and we don't want it to get to that point. But yeah, so we want to focus on this and get it out to more people. And right now we're worldwide. We've got it in the hands of people in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, Asia, South America.
We more often than not are turning down overseas customers just because of shipping and country laws and getting.
You have one in Pakistan too, because my client uses.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, forgot about that, bro.
There's definitely been a lot of generated interest in a lot of different fields, and so it's just really kind of continuing to do what we're doing. And I know a lot of the hardware devices and companies in this space, they're really pushing to be this like data scientist in your pocket. It's an all-encompassing performance testing, tracking, weight room solution. And that's really not why we got into this, and that's really not our core motto. Our three things we wanted to stick to out the gate were simple, affordable, and scalable.
Yeah.
Those were the three spots that we felt no one else was able to hit, and so just continuing to focus on that, being the most affordable and the simplest velocity-based training device on the market. It can be used in a variety of different ways, regardless of power lifter, sport performance coach, a PT, just everyday, gym goer that has a home gym or is working out at, a crunch. We just want it to be accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's smart, because I mean, there's limited lifters that actually want to go that deep into shit.
Yeah.
Like I find with training people and I've been writing articles for years and years and years. They just want to kind of be told what to do.
Yeah.
Like, if it kind of makes sense to them, they're like, cool, then tell me how to do it. And I think your app kind of hits that, where I've never had a client that, I only have a couple clients that are using it now, but I want to get them all to use it. And the biggest complication I've had is some of them train like in their garage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the lighting becomes a question.
Yeah.
Where it has a hard time reading it. And I'm like, dude, just put a goddamn other light there, man. What's the problem?
Put a light in.
Like, how hard is this?
Right.
But other than that, I haven't had anyone say that was a bitch to download, or that was hard to figure out. Like, everyone's like, yeah, dude, I turned it on and put the magnet on the thing, and
it's awesome. That's awesome.
And then it's good. It's like, I think it's great. It's going to be a great thing for online coaches.
Yep.
Because I really like the way they can just send me the video. I can see the speed. I can see him do the movement.
Exactly.
And just judge all that. And I review videos and send them back to my client. They see me watching their video, and I can comment on it. And that way I can see the speed. I can go to, did you notice the speed change through your sets? And, or like, you notice how your technique sucked and your speed dropped on this one, and this other one, how you were clean here and everything went good. So I think there's a huge market for that. And I think there's a huge market for even like what we were talking about earlier, where you can go, hey, here's standard numbers to work off of right away.
Yeah.
And then if it works and it's doing great, you can go deeper into it if you want to. But it can be simple.
Yes, exactly.
And from my experience, a lot of lifters kind of want simple. They're like, I like lifting, I want to go lift.
Yeah. Right. That's what we've seen a lot as well. And I mean, that's really awesome. I'm glad it's been working out so good. And like you said, the only issue you're pretty much ever going to run into is if you're trying to work out in a dimly lit dungeon, right? If you got your dungeon gym set up, just get a light, just crank on the light. And
how hard is it, dude? Put a goddamn little shop light up there. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and like Brody said, I mean, we built it to be that simple, scalable, affordable, and that's what this app will always be. In the future, we've kind of toyed around with building something a little bit more, kind of like more like a coach in a sense. It's never going to be a coach, right? It's never going to be that, but taking somebody and hand holding them a little bit more in the app. But we want to keep this just a tool, a really, really good tool for coaches and for people that want to get better, want to change up their training, and want to have more data. So that's what it'll stay. So
that's cool. So, I mean, are you working on anything else new, or you guys are just focused on this?
Yeah, I mean, mainly focused on this. We are thinking to the next thing a little bit, and we're kind of trying to plan that out. It's pretty exciting. I think we've got something cool coming. We're not exactly sure when that'll happen, but current focus is definitely still building this out more. I mean, it's pretty much the majority of it is ready to go. We don't really need to add anything new to it. There's small things we add to it here and there, but yeah, there's a few things on the horizon that we're pretty excited about. We'll see. It might be this year, it might be next year, but we got a couple things ahead.
We've already done a lot in the first year and a half. So,
so
how big is your facility where you're at now? Because I mean, really, basically, you kind of send out the magnets, and then it's all computer like software from there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we have an office for the three of us, keep inventory. It's big enough to do testing in house. We always want to test the product before we roll stuff out. doing our quality assurance. But yeah, we don't need a huge operation because, like you said, we ship out the magnets. Pretty simple. We actually have a batch of about 500 that should be finished in the next couple of days. We sold out of inventory late last week, which was awesome. Had a lot of people coming after it, and so yeah, I mean, it's we got a pretty good setup here. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, like you said, it's pretty basic, but we don't need anything crazy. We just need an office where we can get in here and think and make stuff and ship it out and test it, and that's what we got. And it's pretty cool. So
I think there's a lot to that. I know in my powerlifting career, I always had that a blue collar, keep it simple mentality. Like there's no reason to go any deeper than I need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you guys being on. I'm looking forward to playing with it more.
Yep.
I think Kyle's going to send me a couple.
Awesome.
So I can experiment.
Yeah, I might be able to get you some before he does. I know they're kind of holding on shipping with some of the stuff they're rolling out. So I'll follow up with you on that. We can definitely get you some inventory for this new batch coming out. I think a little bit quicker than.
Yeah, I'm big on velocity. I mean, if nothing else, just to actually do your accommodating resistance properly.
Awesome. Yeah.
But I think there's more, and I want to start exploring more. And I had one of my in-person clients just did his meet, and I'm like, we're gonna change things up a little bit moving forward with this. And he's great. He loves when I experiment with shit. So.
That's awesome.
Because I really would like to. I train a lot of conjugate, and the one thing I've always kind of struggled with is not going too crazy with max effort work, which I have a tendency to do. And so I really want to start kind of pinning down a velocity and going, okay, today I want you to we're going to shoot for this velocity window.
Yeah.
Because I want to stress you, but I don't want to overstress you.
Oh, for sure.
And keep the speed up. And see how I think I have exciting, like, how would I say that? I'm excited about the future for that. Is that right? Something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
That's awesome.
I think it's going to help us regulate how they do and maybe less deloads. Like going back to that consistency thing. I want to get as close as I can to that point where we can train all the time. And maybe every now and then we go, it's a little much. Let's deload you for a week. Right. Because I know that the deloads need to be done. I know when you're overtraining, it's no good. Yeah. But I still hate deloading because in my brain, it's like, well, then we're not gaining that week.
Yeah.
You know? And we actually are, but it's because we pushed too hard. What if we would have pushed less and just been more consistent?
Right. What would that have done?
Yeah. And I think I really have exciting ideas for this one with that.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear how you use it. Let us know. Keep us updated on how all that goes and how you find the best way to use it is.
And I'm maybe I'll write an article. One of my next articles might be on this one.
That'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
Because I think I just think there's a lot of potential. I mean, I've auto-regulate because I have bad sleep problems. So trying not to let myself overtrain is tough. Mm-hmm. And I've looked at all these different auto-regulation, HVR, grip strength, heart rate, and none of it has actually been that great where I think this one makes a whole lot more sense to me than any of the other ones.
For sure. Yeah, we think, and I really think, if a lot more people knew about it, or I think a lot more people will know about it, it's still pretty small right now. There's still a small amount of people in the general, fitness community that know what velocity-based training is, right? At first we had no clue, but it's so powerful. There's a lot you can do with it. And I think as, people start to hear about it now that there's a much, much more affordable alternative that's, easy to use, get started with, I think we'll start to see a lot more people using it.
And I think too, I actually want to get Brian Mann on. I talked to him at the Swiss last year, and he goes so deep into it.
Oh yeah.
And that kind of scares people. And so I want to get him on the podcast and break him down. Come on, give me the simple version of this for people. And then if they want to go deeper, they can. But let's get them doing it first.
Yeah, that'd be a great podcast. Yeah.
And then kind of what Colby touched on too. I mean, it's taking a step outside of the weight room. use data in every facet of our lives to make smarter, more informed decisions. And it just seemed there's a little bit of resistance in the gym community to taking that same approach. And that's ultimately what this all comes down to: is you're using data to make more informed decisions in your training, your weight and all that stuff. And so we do it everywhere else in our life. It makes sense to implement it in something like this.
For
Yeah.
sure.
It's giving you, I think it gives you better metrics to go off of.
Yeah.
But the weight training community, it's an interesting community.
Yeah.
Again, especially like the powerlifting, like the powerlifters are so ingrained, and so many powerlifters found lifting because they have horror stories in their past. Like they were fat kids, or they were picked on kids, or their dad beat them, or so like lifting was a way to get away from that.
Exactly.
And so now lifting has become a way for them to deal with all their emotions and shit.
Right.
And it's like, dude, we need to kind of back away from that, because you're going to find someday you're going to be super strong and you're going to be like, I still feel like I did.
Yeah.
Like, so work on that stuff and then start getting smarter in the gym with how you're training.
Yep. 100%.
And taking some of that feel out of it. Cause I mean, honestly, why do we do it? We do it to get stronger. So I want to get stronger.
Yeah. Right. You want to get there quicker.
Being stronger at the end is what's going to, that's why I do it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I actually wrote for a couple of the big magazines for a while, which was an interesting experience. And I actually stopped writing for them.
Really?
Because they kind of didn't want you veering too much from what they've always taught.
Mm-hmm.
So they were almost resistant to change.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is what I actually had them tell me at one point, like, hey, Chad, can we change some stuff in your article? Cause it's kind of not what we've been teaching for the last 20 years.
Mm.
And I'm like, isn't that why you hired me, to like tell you the new, where this is growing and changing? So I think the community, it's a little hard to crack a nut sometimes with the actual lifting community.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Brian, he did more in the sports. I think the sports are a little more apt to change.
Yeah.
And then, but there's a lot of young powerlifters now that are doing a lot of cool shit, and a lot of records are getting broken because they're actually changing. Yeah. So you guys are probably in a good window, but I mean, I think they'll change. It's just sometimes you got to go, okay, it's going to be we're going to have to beat on this one for a little bit before it sinks in on some of these guys.
100%. That's what that's what we've seen. It's like at first there's the hesitation. Again, I think a lot of it comes to velocity-based training sounds kind of complicated.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds, nobody knows what that really means. It's not a bad word for it. It's just, I don't think it's the best way to describe it. Like I said, velocity influenced training is probably a little bit better, where you're just using velocity to, make adjustments to your training and to enhance your training. And if you look at it through that lens, it starts to make a lot more sense for a lot more people, but that's why a lot of people are a little bit hesitant at first, or they don't know it, or it's too expensive, or it used to be too expensive. But anyways, I think we'll start to see a lot more people, and that's what we've seen. There's a lot more powerlifters starting to adopt this now, starting to use this in their training. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think if like the simple, like if you can go, hey, get this app, get this magnet, start doing your dynamic work. Just try to hit like 0.7 in your bench, and like I usually go about 0.7 in the bench and about 0.5 in the deadlift. Yeah. And then go, hey, on your max efforts, try to go to 1.4 or 0.14. Yeah, right. And like then people just have like, here, just start. Like now you can just start. You just seriously download the app, put the magnet on, you're good, go. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think they'd be more apt to try it, and then it's like, okay, hey, if you want to get more specific and have more gains, let's find out where your max is and where your max velocities are and stuff, and then we can start tweaking it more. But I think a lot of people, I think there's generic numbers that would actually just help a ton of people, like right off the bat. Yep. Yeah. Agreed. Completely agreed. Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for being on. It was cool talking to you, getting to know you. I'm definitely looking forward to what else you guys have. I'm gonna go back and check out that other app, because I think what was the name of the other one?
TrueRep squat.
TrueRep squat. I think that I want to play around with that too, because that one looks interesting. Like
Yeah,
that would be
definitely.
a good one for my online clients too. Go, hey, use this app next time you squat and send me the video of that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%. Definitely try that out. And and we really appreciate you having us
Yeah,
on.
thanks
It's
for
been
having
great
us,
talking
Chad.
to you
It's been
today.
awesome.
So
Oh, it was great. I enjoyed it, and maybe as things go on and as I experiment more, it might be cool to have you guys on again later and talk about what you got new, what I'm doing, and get your
Absolutely.
ideas on it. Because I mean, you guys invented it, so. Or at least invented the app. You might not have invented velocity-based training, but you invented the app. So.
We didn't invent that, but we've learned a lot about it.
Yeah, we have. Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, that'd be great. That'd be really
Cool.
great. So,
All right, I'm gonna hit my little outro. Thanks again for being on. That was awesome.
thanks, man.
Thank you, Chad.
Definitely was.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit couragebarbell.com. Until next time.